okay, Browns fans and NFL fans in general? I hope you're watching. I mentioned in the last Browns video that I was going to try and get a podcast put out this week, kind of preview the game and talk about some other NFL stuff. So that's what this is. Maybe we'll call it the Optimistic Fan Club podcast. I don't know. This is kind of episode 0. So we will see where things go from there. But this is more of the uncut, off the dome videos. It's not going to be the highly edited stuff. Those will always keep coming out, but I hope to expand this into a more of a general NFL where, the Browns will always get their due because they never get enough attention in the national media. Got to leave it up to guys like us. So let's get into it. Looking like Joe Flacco is getting the nod. Amari Cooper seems kind of happy about it. He looked pretty pleased to have a veteran guy back taking those snaps. He had an interview, if you didn't see it today, where he was asked, what's it been like working with Joe? And Cooper's just saying, when he's back there, like the ball comes out of his hand, it's like poetry in motion. And Joe Flacco has always thrown a very nice ball. If you're a Browns fan, you saw it for all of those years. If you're a young enough or an old enough Browns fan, rather. He can really sling it. He has a strong arm. He can stretch the field. He had that amazing 11 touchdown, no interception run the year that they won the Super Bowl. The guy is very, very capable, but more than anything, he's mature. He's intelligent, not super emotional, a bit of a dud emotionally, if you think about it, which some people don't like. But I think that is a strength that DTR in particular can learn from. And as time goes on throughout the season, maybe DTR will get another opportunity, but this is kind of an inflection point. It's a weird thing, and it's kind of been the theme of the season for Cleveland, where there hasn't been an opportunity to make an adequate and accurate analysis of the players and the team as a whole. There's been so many questions about Deshaun Watson, then has a rough start to the year after the Monday Night Football game against the Steelers, comes out, has a great game against the Texans, almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then he misses time with an injury, with a throwing shoulder injury. Comes back, struggles again, looks to start getting his footing, has a great comeback win against the Ravens, then out for the season. So you can't make an analysis there. Then the run game, the strength of our team, Nick Chubb out game 2. Like, constant things where there's just no closure whatsoever, where you can't make a decision being like, oh, it was the wrong call. Because even, you might be an anti-Deshaun Watson football guy. The off-the-field stuff is a whole nother thing. But in terms of on the field, if he goes to a Super Bowl, if he goes to a couple AFC championships, you will look at that contract and that deal as a success. If he goes to a Super Bowl especially, that immediately makes it worth it. And it just has to happen one time within the 5-year span, right? So that is what fans have been looking for. It's what the ownership has been looking for. Hasn't happened, though, and can't happen now, and it has to move on to next season. Then, Chubb. He's always going to be great no matter what, but now you're kind of at a weird point where you're like, he's going to be turning 29 soon enough. I believe next year. I think Chubb is born a day before me and Myles Garrett is born a day after me. But those guys are starting to age, and now you're kind of at a point where it's like, okay, do we re-sign Chubb to another big contract once this one runs out? All of Cleveland would be saying yes, but what is the prudent financial decision? And maybe we shouldn't be talking about prudent financial decisions when it comes to the Browns because they threw money at Deshaun Watson. However, it just goes to say that there's no clear answer. There's no closure. There's no obvious direction to go in. And then DTR comes in, wins his first game against the Steelers, then gets knocked out against Denver. If he comes back and wins that game, you say, okay, this kid's 2-0 as a true starter. We're going to not include the Baltimore game in there because he had barely any notice. If he wins that Baltimore game, comes back, you go, this is our guy. He's a spark plug. He's a playmaker. He's starting to look very comfortable in this offense. He's dealing. He has arm talent. He can run the ball. You roll with him the whole way through, and Flacco's your backup. Now, if Flacco wins against the Rams, what are you going to do? Pull him and bring a concussed guy off the bench again to start? It becomes very, very confusing. And these are the immensely hard decisions that Kevin Stefanski has to deal with and that he's had to deal with his entire tenure with the Browns. Even the year they make the playoffs, how many times was there a key injury in a key spot that they had to work around, whether it was the COVID stuff when guys were getting pulled for being sick. In the next year, Baker's shoulder injury, what do you do there? There was all of these very conflicting decisions that had to be made, and that is why I do like Stefanski, because I think he's handled the adversity and the insecurity better than most coaches can. I mean, if you look at Zach Taylor's record without Joe Burrow, it's like 4-28, right? So Stefanski's won a lot of games with a lot of subpar quarterback play and without a lot of consistency, for a lack of a better term. But it will be interesting, I think. Again, if Flacco does start, he does go out there, he does win. You kind of got to roll with him until things get bad, let DTR get back and healthy, and just have him waiting in the wings. But I think you could see a quarterback switch. Again, I don't think Flacco will necessarily get a clear run all the way to the playoffs unless he's winning these games. If you lose another one and it's on the ropes, or you lose two, give it to DTR, let him develop for the rest of the year, and have Flacco in his year helping him grow. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm going to say the Browns pull it off. Actually, no, I'm not making a prediction on this one. Last time I did, publicly, they lost. So no prediction. Okay, let's talk 49ers, Eagles. The Eagles have been on one of, realistically, the luckiest runs, the luckiest stretch run of games that the league might have ever seen. They're 9-1, 10-1, not really playing like it. In the Kansas City game, if Marquez Valdes-Scantling doesn't drop that pass, they lose. Last week against Buffalo, horrible officiating. Just the biggest issue probably facing the NFL has been the biased officiating, and, they work their way through that. Buffalo misses a couple kicks, plays it safe at the end of the game. They win, move on there. San Francisco was my NFC pick. I think that last year, if Brock Purdy doesn't get injured in the NFC Championship, San Francisco moves on, wins the Super Bowl. I still think San Francisco is the best team in the league, even though I'm a Browns fan. The Browns beat the 49ers. At the end of the day, it was a missed field goal. They didn't really beat them down and, steal their lunch money. It was a tight game. They missed in that opportunity, but we've all heard the stats. When Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel start, they're 8-0. Like, those two guys are physical tone setters, not zone tetters. Those two guys are physical tone setters at the trench level and in the secondary. And I think when you do that and you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey carrying the ball, if you can block up the first and second level, and then you got a guy like Deebo Samuel steamrolling in the secondary, playing physical, that's how you break those big plays. That's how you break those big runs. It's receiver blocking that makes running backs truly great and have outstanding stats. It's the guys who don't give up on blocks down the field throughout a long play that sparks one. Because what we see, like, if you've played football and you've sat in a film room and say you're on a kickoff or kickoff return coverage, like kickoff return, it's always one guy away from busting a long touchdown, right? Like a kickoff return touchdown. It's always one guy, and that's the same way in the run game as a receiver. It's always somebody who the receiver didn't block who winds up stopping a big play from developing. And that's where I think San Francisco is such a strong unit, because Kyle Shanahan is a psycho. Like, he's an old style football coach. People might not know that, but that is the way he is. Like, they're basically the Ravens of the NFC, but have way more talent in the passing game, better scheme in general, and maybe a more complete defense as well. And that's not me being biased. I have a ton of respect for the Ravens. I can't stand them whatsoever, but I would take San Francisco's offense versus Baltimore's any day of the week. I don't think there's many areas outside of quarterback on that on those two rosters that I'd rather pick. Like, they have a better left tackle, better running back. I like the receivers more. Zay Flowers has been very good. And Odell's having like another resurgence. He just keeps getting injured, which sucks. But Kittle's healthy. Mark Andrews isn't. I like San Francisco. And just in general, to get back on track with this game, I think this is one of the games of the year. But as a lot of people and professional gamblers have been pointing out, like, this could be a bit of a landslide relative to what Philly has been doing. Like, they could lose by double digits, like 10 points maybe, or a touchdown. Even a touchdown win would seem like a big loss to a team that has been this hot and has had this many comeback victories. So that's going to be something to look out for. And I think Philly is not what they were last year. Not too far off, but Hurts doesn't look as good in the pocket. His knee has clearly been a lingering issue. He's not as explosive in the run game. I loved the addition of DeAndre Swift, but in general, it just seems like their real chance to pull it off was last year. They're obviously going to be a really great team still, but I think this is San Francisco's year in the NFC. And two, this is another side note. I wonder how long Nick Sirianni is going to last in Philly, because I think they're a kind of an organization where the coach doesn't necessarily matter or make them great. And this is what I mean. Like, Howie Roseman is a great general manager. Their ownership is solid, and they flood those rosters with talent year in and year out. Like, their front seven has been rebuilt. They pull one guy out, a former Pro Bowler, gets traded, moves, retires, whatever, and then it's like Jalen Carter right back in there. You have Fletcher Cox heading towards the end of his career. Jalen Carter, another guy who's going to be great for 10 years as long as he can keep his stuff together off the field. But you have all of these things, and Doug Peterson comes in, wins a Super Bowl. The team kind of goes to crap because of the whole Carson Wentz situation. Completely rebuild the roster, draft Jalen Hurts, and then within, a couple of years, they're back in the Super Bowl, a couple plays away from winning the Super Bowl, and now the number one seed in the NFC. So all of that to say, I think Nick Sirianni's outburst against Kansas City after the game, I don't think that those things are very sustainable long term. I think you need an adult. And the fact that Jalen Hurts, we've even seen it in little clips where Jalen Hurts is telling Nick Sirianni, like, calm down, like, stop talking to the crowd, stop getting so animated on the sideline. I think that will become a thing. And as Jalen Hurts continues to improve and becomes the darling and the sweetheart of that organization, there might come a time where they aren't pulling out these miraculous wins. They go on a 4-game skid, 5-game skid, where maybe the ownership, Howie Roseman, comes down there and they say, okay, like, you are our franchise guy. We've invested our future into you. Is this the right connection you guys have between the two of you? He doesn't call defensive plays. He doesn't call offensive plays. What is his strength? Would we be better finding a new figurehead to come in who can manage emotions, situations, all of these things, and work better long-term in a more mature way? It was just something where I find that very shocking to act so boisterous, to say, what's up, Chiefs fans? I've never personally seen anything like that. Like, that's college stuff. So that's something interesting. I just think that Shanahan is more of the guy, even though he's a hothead, he's intense. You never feel like he's losing control of a situation emotionally. And I think that Sirianni is kind of that guy. So I think that's something to look out for. Like, if this roster wasn't so stacked, how good would they be under him? How good would they be if he didn't have the coordinators and the positional coaches that they have? So, again, this is based on nothing. This is just my personal opinion, looking from the far, far outside in, and something that I think a lot of people have had on their mind. So, just to say, I'm taking San Francisco this week. Okay, last one. We're going to keep these quick. 3 teams maybe. We'll build to a point where it's a beautiful set with lights and screens and all of these things, but we got to start somewhere, baby. So Chiefs Packers. And let me get a quick drink of water. Yeah. The Chiefs, another team, falling off big time. And they're always going to be viable because they have Pat Mahomes. But if his role players don't play their role, if they don't catch the ball, if they don't block for him, if they can't run the ball well, if the defense can't stop a nosebleed, they could be, a 7-win team potentially. And that might sound ridiculous, but imagine if they don't have Travis Kelce. Imagine if their defense isn't playing at their best. Like, the reason why the Chiefs are sticking around in this race and why they're still leading the AFC West is because their defense is better than it has been the entire times Mahomes has been a Chief. This is kind of the best defense of this dynasty period, but the offense is pretty terrible in general. Like, yeah, you lost Tyreek Hill. That made a difference. It took a year to catch up to that point, but it made a difference. Travis Kelce is 34 years old, turning 35, has a girlfriend who is the biggest pop star in the world, has every endorsement and commercial in the world, and I don't think Travis Kelce's an all-time Hall of Fame talent. This has nothing to do with like, oh, he lost the eye of the tiger. None of that I'm trying to say. But just to say, when that also gets stacked up with the fact that he's nearing the end of he's out of his athletic prime now, but he's also had 10 surgeries, and he's won 2 Super Bowls, and he's turning 35 next season. There's not a lot of great tight ends that play at that age. Like, I could think of a Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, like who else outside of that? And definitely let me know in the comments because I'm sure you have a couple on your mind. But just to say, once Kelce's gone, who does this team have? Like, Justin Ross, I thought he was going to be a huge bright spot. Like, I picked him up out of free agency and fantasy drafts just because I was like, okay, like I saw what he was doing in preseason, and he's moving well. He jump balls well, has great speed, strong hands. Then he has this whole domestic abuse thing, whatever it was. Excuse me if that is wrong. That's just what if my memory serves me correct, it was something of that nature. You have that. Then you have, Rashid Rice. He's like a number 2, number 3. They have a team full of number 2s and number 3s. And that is going to be a serious problem because it's like the Chiefs aren't picking in the top 10 anytime soon. They're going to have to hit on some late round receivers, like late first round receivers, and those can be very hard to come by. Sometimes they fall into your lap, but that's also a big ask to say, okay, now we have this rookie next season, whoever it might be. You're going to be the number 1 guy, and we're going to make another Super Bowl run. Like, I don't think that's happening. I think maybe they could pull it off one more time with Kelce in terms of getting to an AFC championship, maybe sneaking into a Super Bowl because there's been a lot of injuries in the AFC. But this dynasty is done. Like, this is phase 1 over. It could be years until Mahomes is back again. Let's not forget, man. Brady won in 01, 2, and then 3, or 01, 03, 04. It was something like, we all know they had those 3 in that 4-year span. That was the first dynasty. And then Brady didn't win another Super Bowl until 2014. Like, it was a long time until it happened again. So maybe we could see that again where Mahomes doesn't go to another Super Bowl for 10 years. Also, Brady had the advantage of Bill Belichick being in his late 40s at that time. So he still had 20 plus years. I mean, he's still coaching now, and you can say what you want about Belichick, but when he was paired up with Brady, they were great. It worked together. They wouldn't have won that many Super Bowls if they weren't together. Brady would have won Super Bowls. Belichick might have never won a Super Bowl if he didn't have Brady, but Brady wouldn't have had 6 with the Patriots. So, all of that to say, Andy Reid is old. He's not going to be around in 10 years. I mean, I hope he's alive. Absolutely, I hope he's alive, but like he's not going to be on the sideline coaching. He might be involved in the front office or something, this, that, but it is not going to be like how it is now. So who knows what's going to happen with Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs? I think that Mahomes is up there, like probably the greatest all-around talent of all time that we've ever seen. And that's the thing. He doesn't have the best arm. Like Aaron Rodgers probably has the best arm, or Elway, or something like that. But his full package of extend the play, arm talent, arm strength, improvisation skills, leadership, he has all of those things. But that has been fostered in a great environment that the Chiefs have provided, that Travis Kelce has provided to him, and that just seems to all sort of be slipping away. So he's facing his next challenge. They're going to have to re-up everywhere. Maybe if you get some big free agents, you can make another run next year. But Kelce can't be the guy, like the only guy anymore. I mean, we've never even really seen that in general, where a tight end is your number one all the way through a Super Bowl run. Like, not even in New England was Gronk that great. Like, there was still Julian Edelman. Like, Julian Edelman could grind out those, intermediate routes, pick up yards after the catch. They had some other answers there. They had a dynamic running game, and I know the Chiefs have a solid running game too, but just to say, in that pass attack, you need someone to stretch the field, someone to win on those crossing routes, and they don't really have that. They have those guys who can get into the position, but do they have the guys who can make those plays regularly? And that's what the NFL really is. All of the guys who get on a roster in training camp or mini camp have the skill set to do it. It's just will they do it consistently? And that's what greatness is. It's just consistency, constantly. So now let's talk about the Packers and the Chiefs in this. This is why I brought that up. Went on a bit of a tangent there, but Chiefs versus Packers. Really like the Packers in this one, honestly. I think Jordan Love is so much better than people were giving him credit for, and this is such a frustrating thing for me where we jump down the throats of these young guys and say that, we put a scarlet letter on them. We say, like, they're never going to have it. They need to move on. They need to draft another guy, take a gamble on another young player who hopefully works out. You could tell immediately Jordan Love has the size. He has the speed. Like, he extends the play. He honestly, the way he rolls out of the pocket and moves reminds me a lot of Justin Herbert. Like a bigger dude, tall, thick in the midsection and the legs, who can really escape the pocket, work well on the move, but isn't necessarily like a running quarterback. That reminds me, just like Jordan Love reminds me a lot of Justin Herbert in that regard. And two, there was a game against Atlanta, I believe, earlier in the year that I was watching, comes up on Red Zone, and he threw an unbelievable corner ball, like back pylon of the end zone, drops it right in the basket. And you see those throws, and sometimes guys do that and they complete, like PJ Walker when he was on Carolina against Atlanta, makes that Hail Mary, unbelievable throw, but it was just kind of like bad coverage meets a huge arm, and it's a miraculous play. It wasn't really intentional, it was just kind of like, he's down there somewhere. Then you see guys complete throws that is completely intentional, like they thread the needle, mesh it in between three guys, back shoulder, whatever it is, where it was clearly intentional. Like, it could not have arrived there by chance. The ball could not have arrived in that catch radius by chance. And Jordan Love is that guy. Like, he makes some throws that are, you watch and you say, he meant 100% to make this throw, had dead-eye accuracy, amazing velocity on the ball, and completed this ball. I think that he is the 100% the answer in Green Bay. Yes, it hasn't been perfect. He's still young in terms of his playing experience, so he has some growing to do. But I just think that if you really watch him objectively and watch a full game, like in that Detroit game on Thanksgiving, he was dealing that ball. And I think that to move on from something like that, because he isn't a Burrow or an Allen or a Mahomes. We've become spoiled on quarterback talent. If you remember, like in that like 2015 to 2018 period where it was the end of Peyton Manning, almost the end of Tom Brady, Rivers, like Phillip Rivers, Roethlisberger, all those guys, kind of the end of that era. And there was this weird void in that period as well, where we weren't getting a ton of young, great quarterbacks. Then we go on to like Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Trevor Lawrence, more names. You know, then years later, you get Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Then you have Justin Herbert. Like, you have all of these guys who come in, excel right from the start, find success, and we just think that is the norm. Like, when I was a kid, like I was born in 95, so I remember being a kid, sometimes quarterbacks would come in and they would just not be good. They would not move the ball. They would not throw a lot. And they would get like 2-3 years to prove it. And unless they were colossal disasters, like it was like a Brandon Weeden, you would get opportunities. And even Brandon Weeden got like 2 years to prove himself. And now we try and move on from guys after the first year of starting because they have all of the tools and the talent, but they don't play perfect games. It's just an insane expectation. So we need to give people more grace when they show that, like, okay, you have some things in the tool belt that are pretty phenomenal. Let's put you in the right position and see if you can do more getting comfortable. Then you have guys like Desmond Ridder, who to me never, ever really showed a ton. When you watch Desmond Ridder throw the ball, there's nothing exceptional about it. There's nothing that stands out or pops. His speed is the kind of speed where you go, okay, by the time you're 30, this is going to be completely gone. Like, it's not physically talented that much, you know? So to me, I see a guy like that, I'm like, okay, that is the kind of player you move on from. Jordan Love, no. Big, strong arm, fast. Clearly his teammates like him, and he's made phenomenal plays with his arm. Let's watch all of the tape before we just cast someone out and say, you have to move on. So that's basically it. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not a Browns fan and you watch, I really, really appreciate you. I mean, I think you'd still find all the Browns stuff that we do very entertaining, but this is something I'm looking to do weekly, and I really want to build up the production quality and just have it be a really dynamic show. So a lot of big things coming ahead. If you guys want to buy some merch, go to optimisticfanclub.com. I'll link it below. You can follow me on Twitter, all that stuff. And we will see you guys soon.